Hello everyone. So for this week's video, I decided to do something a little different. I decided I want to talk to you all about our integumentary system, more specifically the different layers of our skin, and give you some visuals that I think of whenever I want to remember the order of layering, their functions, and their makeup. I know I'm a visual learner, so I decided to paint some of the things that I used to think of to help me remember each layer's characteristics. So this is me setting up our canvas real quickly, just trying to get all our colorful layers intact. As you know, our integumentary system consists of three main layers. Those layers are the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. Now, this is obviously not what the layers of our skin look like in reality. This is just a cute little way to kind of help you distinguish between each layer. That being said, let's jump right into our most superficial layer, the epidermis, and the sublayers that can be found within it. So the first layer I would like to talk about is called stratum basal. This is the deepest layer of the epidermis, which is also known as stratum germinativum. This is a layer that contains the stem cells that we need for regeneration. The cells of the upper layers of our epidermis will eventually die off because they're too far away from the blood supply in our dermis, which I will get to in a little bit. So one trick I use to help me remember this is to associate basal with basement. That's why I drew a cute little basement party with our stem cells. Look at them, they're so cute. Yeah! Okay, so the next layer I want to talk about is stratum spinosum. You may have already seen a sneak peek of her while I was explaining stratum basal, because I guess when I was making this canvas, I was super excited to draw these spiderwebs. But the stratum spinosum layer is the layer right above our stratum basal layer, our basement layer. This is a pretty thick layer that is made up of web-like pre-keratin filaments attached to our desmosomes. So in order to help me remember this layer, the name spinosum and their web-like projections all reminded me of spiderwebs. So spiders spin webs. So for stratum spinosum, I decided to draw some spiderwebs, and they're spiders, of course. I know it's not Halloween quite yet, but it's almost spooky season, so don't forget, stratum spinosum has web-like projections and is right above stratum basal. Next up is stratum granulosum. This layer is characterized by having granular cells and is where keratinization begins. Cells are flattened and their organelles disintegrate, so to help me remember that I drew some flat cells. I don't know why, but my brain automatically associates cells or really anything scientific with the color green, even though they're not necessarily green in reality. And I drew them heading upstairs because that is the direction in which our layers are essentially quote-unquote shut off. So yeah, granulosum, granular cells. The next layer is stratum lucidum. This layer can only be found in thicker skin, which is why we say there are 4 to 5 layers of the epidermis instead of just saying that there are 5. This layer consists of our dead keratinocytes, so because of this I painted my green flat cells, even though again, they're not necessarily green in reality. So remember, lucidum can only be found in thick skin and contains our dead keratinocytes. So the final and most superficial layer of the epidermis is stratum corneum. This layer makes up about 3/4 of the epidermis's thickness, so I tried to make her look a little thicker than the other layers. This layer protects our deeper layers of cells from water loss and protects us against cuts and penetration. So why did I decide to draw a barbed wire fence to represent stratum corneum? It is also known as the horny layer because of its projections, and its main function is protection. So I associated it with a barbed wire fence because it is horny and can be used on farms to protect the animals that are inside. So yeah, that's stratum corneum. So now that I'm done talking about the epidermis, I'm going to move on to the dermis. So the dermis is the second main layer of our skin located deeper to the epidermis. Remember, epi means above, so the epidermis is above the dermis. Like the epidermis, the dermis is divided into layers as well. First, there's the papillary layer, which is the upper 20% of the dermis. It only contains some of the blood vessels in the dermal layer. The remaining 80%, give or take, is the reticular layer, which consists of more of the blood vessels that supply our skin. The dermis contains fibroblasts, macrophages, which are essentially our cleanup cells, and sometimes we can find white blood cells and mast cells. Because of this, I kept this drawing pretty simple and drew blood vessels, and white dots are our white blood cells that can also be found in this layer. So now that we've completed the epidermis and the dermis, we can talk about the hypodermis. The final layer that I will be discussing in this video is the hypodermis. Now, the hypodermis is not technically part of our skin, but it is still included in our integumentary system. Remember, hypo means below, so this layer is located below the dermis. This is our subcutaneous layer that consists of our adipose tissue or fat. This tissue is there to help us absorb shock and insulate the organs located deeper to this layer. The hypodermis essentially anchors our skin to structures below, like our muscles. So the way that I remember the hypodermis is to associate it with fat. Because of that, I drew some McDonald's M's to represent our adipose tissue that is located within this layer. McDonald's. And that is it. That is our integumentary system. I hope this video has been helpful for you guys. Just feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Bye!